Industry Insider.
James Pass is here from JPD, James Pass Design, here in Dubai. Usually, James, we talk branding. I try and keep up with you as you use technical terms that very often I don't understand. But today, can we start with just getting something straight? Welcome, by the way. I've launched in. But Generation X, Generation Y, Millennials, Generation Z, and then we've got people after that we haven't yet put into a generation, I suppose, for marketing or branding purposes. But who is Generation X? Is that me?
Well, good
grumpy
afternoon,
people?
good evening. Thank you for having me on board again. No, it's not grumpy people. Generation Z are those kind of, they say, roughly born around 1995, 2005. The generation that is seen as a lot different to the generation before them. You know, like you just mentioned, the generation before, which is very centric around themselves, you know, taking pictures of themselves and really focusing on brands and personalities.
Yeah.
Generation Z is the complete polar opposite. You know, this is a generation that's kind of, they grew up coming out of the likes of 9/11, coming out of the Great Recession, and it kind of mentally has seen that has changed them a lot. They are very much more a group that are a lot more to do with real tangible things. They're not more, you know, they're more on about authentic experiences rather than kind of like brands and brand names and such. So they're a lot more loyal and a bit more down to earth, as you might say.
Okay, so in theory, you have to approach Generation Z or Generation Z in a different way than approaching Generation Y, and again in a different way to approaching Generation X, which is, I guess, where I'm kind of firmly sat. But how do you do that with Generation Z, which is my son's generation? He's kind of on the younger side of that, but his approach on social media is very different to, say, Alex, who's usually here, who is very much Generation Y. How do you get through to people of that generation? Because they're very used to being approached on social media. They're kind of, they're not as enamored by it. It's just part of their life, isn't it?
That they've grown up with not knowing anything opposite. You know, it's entangled into the way of living today, and they're more used to multiple faces of digital faces to interact with the world and interact with people. But they actually are finding now that actually the Generation Z are actually wanting to have real conversation, real interactions with real people. They don't want to be seeing kind of like the celebrity endorsements. So when it comes to branding and businesses going forward who want to kind of catch on to this generation as they grow stronger in this part of the world, I believe the statistics almost like 50% of below 25 years old age are based here in Dubai and the UAE, shall we say. It's to start to look at, when you're building a brand, it's not, like I've always been saying, a brand is not a logo, it's more than that. And Generation Z are going to be looking for more authentic, real, tangible, transparent stories going forward. So when you're building a brand going forward, it really is about holding your heart on the sleeve and telling you who you are and what you stand about, because they're going to care more about that than pretty logos and features as well.
When you said that this generation are looking more to talk to people and have more interaction with people and maybe moving away from celebrity endorsements, is this why maybe I've noticed it myself, moving more towards influencers and the people who are active on Instagram, they're bloggers, they're active on Snapchat and stuff, because this generation, they can relate to them more. They're real people, real tangible people that they can get in touch with and talk to. So brands going, that person's got 25,000 followers, we'll use them to market our brand, because they talk directly to the people we want to market to.
Correct, yeah, and they're talking to influencers. They want to connect with people who are of their own generation. That's why you see they spend nearly 3 to 4 hours a day on YouTube and cultivating their own TV channels. They're being turned off by satellite TV and terrestrial TV because they want to curate their own. They want to talk and speak and listen to their own audience. That's why they're also getting turned off from places like Facebook and so on.
Okay, so let's go back to influencers for a moment. Can you define a social media influencer to me? When do you become a social media influencer? Is it when you get a level of followers? Is it just because you proclaim it from the rooftops? How does that work?
When it comes to influencers, it is more the case, you are finding what we find is almost amateur people who have got a message, they've got a voice, they've got something that they want to talk about and say, and it's about people who want to connect with that. And then obviously as the news builds up and that authentic story that they like to connect with, the audience grows as well. So they become a mainstream kind of influence. And we see that with a lot of people who've turned brand or YouTube posts or Instagram posts into now big businesses. You know, people like Kuda Bruti is one example of that.
Okay. Who's successful with Generation Z, Generation Z at the moment? Is there an example of a big brand, with naming names if you want to, who have connected in a really successful way?
Well, the brands that will do well, and it's probably still too early to say about a lot of brands that are doing well with regards to Generation Z, are brands that are going to probably have what we're going to talk about next is brands with the courts.
Right.
They want to connect with brands that have a kind of a humane part to them, whether it's giving back or it's being ethically correct with what they are promoting going forward. You know, Tom's has been a great example of that.
So, you know, offering something tangible. That's the point, isn't it? Offering something that is giving back, but tangibly giving back.
Correct. Yeah, it's things with a story. It's things with a heart. You know, things that are real, that they can touch and feel, even though we're in a digital world. Something they can relate to, that they feel honest. You know, this is a generation that are very much determined, open-minded, and very thoughtful about how they perceive and go through the world. In fact, you know, they're seeing a lot of them as having much of an entrepreneurial spirit behind themselves and what they do. We're seeing a lot more of Gen Z entrepreneurs doing hell of a lot successful in today's world. There's a young lad in the UK who's just sold his mobile app for $30 million to Google and now has a full-time job at Google, and he's not left school yet. And you're having a lot more of these Generation Z entrepreneurials coming through.
Who was it the other day? Shane was saying on Career Connect, Shane Phillips was saying, we're going to see the first sub-20-year-old billionaire.
Oh, in of course.
The next few years. So you'd agree with that. So one thing you always say when you come in, James, and I always think this is interesting, and it's almost it's a mantra, but I mean that in a positive fashion, in a respectful way, is that you've got to tell a story. And I think that covers, that's not just for Generation Z. I feel like that. I feel like with certain brands, I would buy into them as much as I would admit to, but because I believe in them. There are certain things I will not buy because I know they were animal testing in the past, or I don't agree with them, or I think they've got enough money, stupidly, whatever it is. But I think all of us, I think that crosses all generations, that if you really believe something and you buy into something and you think they're doing it for good, in that they have a story and they mean it, people will do that. I don't think that's just Generation Z.
No, and you're correct. And I think occasions with obviously the recession, and people lost a lot of faith in big brands and big industrial brands that would have been the pioneers of American industry. People have now recalled back, and they want to have real tangible conversations with brands and products and services. That's why you see certain brands do really well. You know, Apple have always been great at what they do because they don't talk about the features, they talk about why they do what they do, and that's why we want to relate. That's why we want to own their product.
Okay, so Generation Z, you could pretty safely say, are the people coming into the workforce now. So they're people who are clearly worth targeting. If you are a brand or a company or a business looking to target these new entrepreneurs, these people who are starting to earn money in the workplace, how do you do it? Is there a checklist that you need to go through, the way you need to approach people, just to finish off?
From what we found, you know, certainly with we've taken a lot of young designers, we take a lot of interns in from the numerous colleges around town, and those designers that we've taken on full board in our studio, we find it, you know, they like to have brands that they work with that they can relate. You know, we do a lot of pro bono work. And the passion you see in the designers in our office when they have to work on a pro bono project as opposed to maybe a corporate project, it's unbelievable, and that empowers them to want to come to work every day. So maybe as agencies, as companies going forward, having a little bit of that, you know, CRS up back into your business will help drive a lot of hires, and the right hires, and also empower your team as they go forward.
So we want to give back these days?
I think so.
Okay. Let's just bookend the dates, because somebody's texted in. Define the different generations. Okay, so somebody's frustrated that we can't do that. Loosely speaking, Generation X is what?
Generation X.
Generation X, me. That goes to, I don't know. Does the Generation X go to like the early 90s? Is that about? No, sorry, mid 80s, I think.
Yeah, mid 80s, and then we got the Ys as well.
But then the Ys go to what, about 95, so about 1980 to 95.
Yeah, and then we kind of cross over to what we, the kind of millennial Gen Zs. Moving forward.
Okay, and millennials and Generation Ys kind of millennials kind of bridge the gap between Gen Y and Gen Z.
Correct.
Okay, that's not confusing at all, is it?
No. The funny thing is, there's a lot of stats that go around where the dates actually change. Different parts of the world.
Yeah.
The generation gaps jump as they go forward.
Okay.
Certainly in North America versus Europe, and obviously here.
Well, what's encouraging though is it seems to be that the next generation want to do something for good.
Yeah, they're more honest, more loyal, and they want to do something better in the world, but they want to do it themselves.
God.
That's the difference.
I feel like a not grumpy old person saying nice things about young people. You've changed me. James Pass is from James Pass Design, talking branding. James, good to see you. Thank you.
Thank you.